I am Brad Keelor. You are a Director's Cut viewer. Next up on Director's Cut, it's our best of 2023.
The chills that you spill up my back keep me filled with satisfaction when we're done. Satisfaction of what's to come.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. You will notice that there are no guests with me, and that's because this is our best of 2023 episode. We'll get to a little bit more about that in just a moment. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, you should, of course, go over to geoinstitute.org after you watch this today. There you will find out all kinds of things about us, including that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and/or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and it's the best of, you really should, you should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to our YouTube channel. Now, 47 episodes of Director's Cut in 2023. That means 470 questions, if you can do the math correctly, and I think you can, viewers. We have chosen the 10 of the best of the year. Wide-ranging topics, a great way to get an intro to the series, and you can, of course, click on the links below where you're watching this to get the full episodes that these were pulled from. That is all you're going to get from me for an intro today. It's plenty anyway. Let's get to the best of 2023. So the next question is always our research or practice question. What we're going to do here, you're going to tell us a little bit about the job you worked on at Nashville Airport, and you're going to tell us some very serious things, aspects about the project, and then you're going to follow that up with one or more ridiculously hilarious stories about things that happened to you there. Take it away, Will.
Okay, so the Nashville International Airport job. There's doing an expansion on the airport, mainly an international arrivals facility, and my company was required to have an on-site presence for every micropile foundation, or whether it was a supportive excavation. We were required to be there on site and record what happened. So there's like 2,000 of them. So it took like 2 years to do it all. It wasn't all full time, but I basically lived in Nashville for the better part of 2 years working on that job. And so, I mean, if a job's going to be 2 years long, 2,000 micropiles, that's our company's not very big, and so it's a big job for us. And so I was sent there to be sort of the face of it, because someone's got to be in the field, and the staff level, project level guys are going to be the ones that do it. So I was a little nervous, kind of being the face of this big project for us. The first day on the job, we had to go through some safety training, and we had some tasks I had to do that day. And they said that if you show up 5 minutes late, 1 minute late to the safety meeting, you're not allowed in. And I was like, oh, well, I better make darn sure I'm going to be there on time. So I go up the night before, because I said, I'm going to take out the variables of the travel time. It's a 2.5 hour drive. There's some road work. So I went up the night before, and just when I get there, I realized that I didn't have my passport. And at that next day, I was also going to get badged so I could go out on the tarmac of the airport. And to do that, it's like a government ID. You have to have 2 forms of ID. So, one, I have to make it to the safety training, or else I can't do my job that day. And then, are we going to lose the job? What are we going to do? So I'm all worried about it. So then the other one, I can't, if I don't get my badge, I can't do it that day. I have to go out on the airport. So I decided I need to turn around and go back home and get my passport. Well, it was like 10, 11 o'clock at that point in time. I got there kind of late. So I'm getting back to my house in Knoxville in the middle of the night. And I decide I can either go to the hotel, sleep for a couple hours, or sleep now for a couple hours and then go. So I decided to just sleep then and then go. And so I'm like low on sleep, coffeeed up at like, in the middle of the night. It's not a good situation. So a lot of time to get there because I'm scared that I'm going to arrive late and not be able to get in the safety meeting. So I drive there and end up arriving, and I'm like, all right, well, let's see what time is it? Let's see what time it is. I'm not really sure. I think I'm pretty sure I'm here before I need to be here. And I look at my watch, and it says a certain time. I had a Timex Ironman watch that didn't reset on its own. I look at the clock on my car, and it says a time. And then I look at my phone, and it says a third different time. So I had 3 times that were telling me what the time of day was, because it was right after daylight savings time. And so my phone had updated to Central Time, and my watch was on Eastern Time post daylight savings time, and my car was on Eastern Time before daylight savings time, or something like that. I'm not for sure. Ended up being an hour before it started. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take a nap. So in my car, because I'm exhausted. So I took a nap in my car. Wake up an hour later, go into the safety meeting, and everything's good. And in the safety meeting, they said that your car, in order to be out on the airport, needs to have magnets identifying your car as a work vehicle. So it was like your company's logo or something on it. And if you don't have those magnets, your car might get towed. And I was like, oh, well, I don't have magnets. Is my car going to get towed? I'm not for sure. So after the meeting, I go talk with the guy, and he's like, yeah, you guys need to get magnets now. Like, you're going to have to be out here consistently. And so, we didn't have them, so I had to contact my people and whatnot. So I walk outside to go find my car, and I look out the front, the door of the job trailer, and I don't see it. And I'm like, well, this guy just told me my car's probably going to be towed. It's towed. It's gone. I don't know where it is. That's not good. So I go tell him that. He's all angry. He's like, I told the airport they shouldn't do that. And he's cussing, and he's like having a little temper tantrum. I'm like, I'm sorry, my car got towed. I'm apologizing to him for my car getting towed. And he's like, well, it's not your fault. And I'm like, okay, you're just angry. That's fine. So go throughout the day, perform all of my tasks that I'm supposed to do that day. And, in the middle of the day, the superintendent for the general contractor comes up and apologizes to me for the car being towed, and some other people are. So everyone on site knows that my car has been towed, and everyone's apologizing. And I'm like, just forget it. I wish no one would know that my car got towed, whatever. So at the end of the day, they give me a field engineer to take me to whatever towing company towed my car. But first I have to call every towing company and figure out which one it was. So I called 4 local towing companies that are known to tow cars at the airport. None of them have my car. And I'm like, I don't know where it is. I don't know what to do. I mean, if I can't have someone's got to come pick me up, I guess, maybe it's stolen. I don't know. So I am pacing around the job trailer, just trying to, brainstorm what we can do at this point. And I walk around one of the Connex boxes, and I am confronted by my car right next to, right in between 2 Connex boxes. It was kind of hidden, but I kind of snaked it between these 2. And out of the, disorientation of what time is it, how much sleep have I had, do I have my passport, all of that, I've lost track of where I parked it. And it wasn't towed, and there it was. So I go back to the field engineer, and I say, sorry, but I have something extremely embarrassing to tell you. My car's not towed. It's on the other side of that Connex box. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to walk over there. I'm going to get in my car, and I'm going to go home. And all I ask of you is that you keep this between us. I don't want anyone else to know that I just lost my car.
So I love a couple of things about this. One is the magic of director's cut, that you said you haven't told anybody in your office about this story until now. And so, well, hello, Dan Brown and Associates. You've got Will's full story. We have a lot of hard-hitting questions on Director's Cut too. Serious journalism, we call it in the business. And that's where we're going to go now. And it's the question that we teased at the beginning of the show. What's the most trouble you found yourself in as a kid?
Wow. Well, that's an interesting question, Brad. Throughout the years, my parents have always bragged about how peaceful and well-behaved I am while growing up. And that is partially true, as I always stayed low-key when it came to troublesome activities. That does not mean that I was not involved in trouble. The only thing that I remember, actually, is that when I was like 11 to 12 years old, I and a group of around maybe 12 kids, we went to one of the fields in our village where the owner had planted the land with green peas. I don't know if you know these green peas, but basically they use them to do the hummus dish, the famous Lebanese dish. So these peas, they can be eaten while they are still green, and they have a salty shell, and the peas inside are just delicious. So me and my friends, we spread through the field. Each of us started to pick up a pile of these green peas, which the guy planted and was willing to basically take from the ground and probably sell. And after 5 minutes into delving into this, I start seeing my friends one after the other just pass by me at full speed. So basically, I turn my head and I see the owner of the land with his belt in his hand, just chasing every single kid across the field. I immediately took off and I barely escaped the belt and I zoomed directly to my house. I didn't tell my parents anything that night, and I prayed to God that the owner will not tell them anything also. And surprisingly, he didn't. And a week later, I saw him on the road, and he just smiled and waved. Wow. So I knew that it was over.
That's pretty good. And what a happy ending. Yeah. So now, when we talked about this a little bit before we recorded, you know, I said I never thought about it, but I had never seen fresh chickpeas anywhere. You know, it's always in a can. And you gave me what is likely the reason why this is. So can you tell everybody why chickpeas are always in cans?
Because they only grow fresh for a very limited period, 2 to 3 weeks, I think at the beginning of the summer. And after that, they're gone. I mean, you have to eat them fresh during that period, and they will just taste delicious at that point in time.
That is amazing. I always say that every episode of Director's Cut comes back to food, sports, and music. And, well, we already knocked one off. So we'll see what we can do here with the remaining questions. There are fun questions on Director's Cut, too. And we're going to jump right into those. What is the best and worst thing about having a hyphenated name?
Well, I feel that my name actually is pretty perfect for someone in geotech. It's a special kind of hyphenated name because my maiden name was Sample, and as someone pursuing a career in geotech, I thought, like, well, man, I can't ever change this name. It's too ironic for someone who spends all day with soil samples. And then I met my husband and was like, except, and so now I am the Sample Lord. And if I don't invent some sort of sampling equipment by the end of my career, I probably will have failed because, like, I already have this branded name. So that's the best part of my particular hyphenated name. But the worst part is that I didn't realize how many systems apparently can't handle a hyphen. So that's the DMV having issues with my license, trying to book airline tickets, and it won't let me put a hyphen in, or hotels. So whenever I check into hotels or dinner reservations, it usually starts with, oh, it's under Sample Lord. Oh, you can't find it? Well, check Sample, check Lord, check any iteration of those. And that's kind of annoying because I had no idea, like, in this day and age, so many systems couldn't handle a hyphen in a name.
So what kind of problems does that cause? Because I hit adulthood right before September 11th, and things were a lot more easygoing before that. And as a result, some places I was Brad, some places I was Bradley, some places had my middle initial. The first time I go to get on a plane after September 11th, I got flagged because my legal name was different than what was on my United frequent flyer account. What's the biggest problem you've ever had because of this?
So I'm actually surprised because all the time when I fly now, my license has one thing, the airline ticket usually just has like sample lords smushed together. None of it matches. And I've actually never got called out because of it. So I'm actually surprised I don't have more issues. It hasn't been an issue. Maybe it's just you. But yeah.
Well, and it's modern times now. They can scan stuff. In 2002, I feel like it was like that was about as good as it got, the compare and contrast.
Yeah.
Wow, so that's a lot of work. Now, the other thing I think Sample Lord would be excellent for, you're probably not old enough to remember the text-based video games of the 1980s and maybe even early 1990s. A text-based video game based on geotechnical engineering called The Sample Lord would be incredible. And I hope that some viewer is watching this now and will go code this thing today because we need this to happen.
Yeah. Someone reach out to me. Let's get it going. I got the name. You can bring the ideas.
This has Victoria Bennett written all over it. Maybe I will suggest it to her.
Has there ever been a time or instance in your life where you have been very embarrassed? When and why was that?
I had a long list to choose from, but I have a few favorites. I worked for the British government before I came to ASCE. I was at the embassy in DC, and my job was to build UK-US research partnerships. So as part of this, we would have cabinet officials that would come over, either Americans that would go to the UK or the UK cabinet officials would come here, and we were kind of responsible for their visit while they were here. So one time the health secretary came from the UK and he was doing a visit entirely on data analytics. And that was one of my things. So I was in charge of planning this. So we would always start out with a breakfast at the ambassador's residence where everybody would sit around a very formal, fancy table and have a very formal English breakfast. And they were early in the morning, usually 7:30 or 8. Okay. I am a 9:47 kind of guy when it comes to starting the workday. But in DC, you get used to it. Sometimes you have to go to breakfast in the morning. So one day I drive into work and I come in and, I'm for some reason, I had a lot of stuff I'm carrying that day. And I'm dressed about like this in like a hoodie and jeans. And no one from my team is in our little area in the office. And I'm like, well, this is kind of weird. It's almost 10 o'clock. Where is everybody? So maybe a half hour later, my boss and one of my coworkers come in and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh man, traffic was bad this morning. I had to carry this stupid thing in. I don't know. And they're like, you didn't go to the breakfast today. And I'm like, what breakfast? And they're like the health secretary, and I was like, how you have those moments where everything just comes flashing back to you?
Oh my
And I was
goodness.
like, was there a tent sign with my name on it? And they're like, oh yeah. And I was like, where was I supposed to be seated? And they're like, right next to the Secretary of Health. And I was like, okay. So because I can be a little flaky, my boss is like, okay, here's what we're going to do. She's like, you had a stressful situation at your kid's school, right? And I was like, not really. And she's like, I don't think you get this. She's like, you had a stressful situation at your kid's school. She's like, you're going to go over in about an hour and tell the ambassador that that's what happened. And that's what I did. And everybody was okay with it. But that was probably one of my biggest ever. I have many more if anybody wants to talk about them at Geo-Congress. Okay. The third question is always the research or practice question. And this time we're going to go, we want to tell people what they're going to see when they come to Vancouver. What is a Vancouver project that people might see when they get there that you worked on?
So when I started, and this is what made me really love geotechnical engineering, I started on the Portman Highway 1 project. And this was around 2008, and that post sort of economic issue. It's a 35-kilometer project that stems from Vancouver all the way out to the valley in Vancouver. It was a highway widening. They reconstructed multiple interchanges, bridges, ground improvement. You were going through some of the worst conditions in the Lower Mainland. It also had one of the giant new cable stay bridges that spans the Fraser River. And on that project, I had some amazing just mentors. We had all the consultants essentially in town who were working on this project. So I got to deal with peat over clay silt with a very high moisture content. I got to deal with ground improvement from surcharging to pile supported embankments with geosynthetic working platforms, which had not been done in BC before. Timber foundations, drilled shafts, bridge foundations, handling multidisciplinary comments. And so it was a project where I got to see how multifaceted engineering is as a whole and how interesting geotechnical engineering can be, particularly in Vancouver, because we get almost every type of ground condition you have in a very small condensed area. You can drill in one location and then you can go 100 meters in any direction and maybe have completely different geology. And so the complexity of the geology here, the high seismicity that we have, the fact that I got to touch almost every type of aspect we do in civil geotechnical engineering was really cool. And so if you come to Vancouver, you will see portions of that project. I get to drive past a bridge I did the foundations for on a weekly basis and driving to my parents' place. And so it's one of those projects that is the reason why I love geotechnical engineering, will stay with me throughout the rest of my career.
I am from Big Ten country myself. I grew up in Michigan, so I'm a little bit partial to the traditions that the Big Ten schools have. SEC, ACC, very nice, but the Big Ten is at the top of the list. And like I said at the beginning, you're the first current Purdue Boilermaker we have had on the show. I had to ask, what Purdue tradition is your favorite and why?
Right. So I guess what I found kind of entertaining, funny when I first came here were the Boilermaker Special, the little train that you can actually ride on campus, and Purdue Pete's appearances on variety of events. But I think the one that I like the most is the presence at the Indy 500. The Purdue marching band I think every year goes there and accompanies whoever sings Back Home Again in Indiana, which I love as a song. And so I think probably that one. And I was very much into car racing when I was younger, and so I kind of connect with that. I try to watch the race. So yeah, I would say that tradition.
So maybe we should twist the knife a little bit here. Do the IU or Notre Dame marching bands go to the Indy 500 to perform, Rod?
I think it's the Purdue band that we see that every year.
Just reporting the facts. Not taking shots at any of our colleagues that might be at either of those other two institutions. My favorite's the Monster drum. I love Monster. I was infatuated with it when I was a little kid, and anybody who has to climb a ladder to play a drum like that, I'm like, that's a winner in my book. That's my personal favorite Purdue one. We're gonna go right back to motorcycles. And you tweaked this question a little bit, and that's fine. We encourage that on Director's Cut. And the way I phrased it was, what was your most unbelievable motorcycle story? You're going to go with unforgettable.
Well, you know, I've I've ridden all over the world actually, and had some fantastic rides. I remember being on the riding up on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington and seeing a wolf out there in the middle of nowhere, just me by myself. But when you asked that question, I thought of riding with my late youngest son and also with my grandson. So the times you spend riding with your friends are maybe the best. But my grandson, he's now a student at Tennessee Tech, and we still go on rides together. But I remember riding with him, laying out trails here on our property in Tennessee. And he used to sit on I had a little XR100. He used to sit in front of me, put his feet on the engine and hands on the crossbar pads. And we rode trails all over the place, putting up, marking trails. And I remember I said, we should put some signs out, Joey. I said, what do you want to put on the sign? He said, no whining. So up at the top of one of our hard trails on our property, we put a sign, no whining.
So I got two follow-up questions here, and I guess they're both specifically related, but the first one is, it was totally organic, your son and your grandson getting into motorcycling, or do you feel like you had a lot of influence on it?
I didn't directly influence, but I'm sure I had a lot of influence because motorcycles have been a part of my life since I was 13. So you grow up always around it, and you just kind of naturally, it's I'm sure if you ask my grandson, he doesn't even remember when he first started riding, because he doesn't remember. You don't remember what you did when you were 4 years old, so it just sort of comes naturally if you're hanging around me.
And the other question I wanted to ask is about getting out and creating new trails, marking new trails. What do you look for in a new trail? What are the top things?
Around where I live, the top thing is, can you actually get up there? Because the terrain is so rough. But yeah, it's, I used to go trail riding with some of my buddies out in Colorado in the summer, and you just look for, some challenging trails, which that challenging is a relative term depending on how skillful of a rider you are. But you want to go someplace that's cool. We have on my property here some waterfalls and caves and things like that it's a good destination.
Absolutely. You want to have something to see when you get to the end. That's what my kids always tell me when we're out hiking, is that there needs to be a good, solid end point so you can feel accomplished, like you did something. Yeah. We have two questions left. This one is a fun one that I can't believe I've never asked anybody before. And we teased this at the beginning. If you could put together a dictionary or encyclopedia for someone just getting into geotech, what are a few definitions that you would put in it?
So I thought this was a great question. And, we work a lot with younger engineers just out of school. And I feel like, especially like just with geotechnical engineering, and especially on the contractor side, besides all the terms that you learn in school, you start to learn a whole new set of vocabulary that maybe you didn't learn in undergrad, related to equipment, drilling terminology. And I think an encyclopedia of definitions would be really a very useful tool for people just coming into our industry. For example, seek and piles, right? Start saying, oh, we're going to bid the seek and pile job, and someone's like, what's a seek and pile wall? So
before you go, are you ever surprised when you get that question?
No, because I didn't know either. And sometimes, yeah, but it's but you do forget that these are things that do not come like words and terminology that does not come naturally, or didn't come naturally to you, like right out of school. Yeah.
What, you got a couple more for us?
Yeah, so I said seek and piles, micro piles, like board pile rig versus pile driving rig, rolled and welded pipe versus spiral weld pipe, all material terms, allowable load versus, ultimate load, down drag.
You got a
There's
lot.
so many.
You're going to be one of the
I could
authors
keep
of this
going.
thing when we put it together. This is fantastic. And I said, I don't want to give away my ideas in the middle of the interview here, but I thought, what a great podcast or show this would be if we took a term and had one of our members read one off every week. And maybe you're going to see that in the future, viewers. And you guys have an amazing story, and I'm so happy about this. So we don't have to hear about pizza and beer at the chapter meetings today. How did you first get involved in ASCE and GI?
So for me, it was doing the retaining wall competition, the geo wall, and that sent me to the GI Congress, Geo-Congress in New Orleans in 2008. That was my first real experience.
Yeah. And then ASCE for me, I was undergrad doing the student chapter in Steel Bridge, but GI was when I was at Virginia Tech. Mike Duncan was given the keynote lecture at Geo-Congress 2008. So he had all the students go there. So it was my first experience to Geo-Congress. And that's actually where we met at that conference down there.
The student reception, the first night.
What I would love is if there was some way we could take credit for all these relationships and marriages that have blossomed out of GI. But I don't know if
we don't deny GI and our school's credit for helping get us together. So.
I think maybe 1 year we have to have Geo-Congress over Valentine's Day, and we could have a special event for everybody who met because of the GI. So we have to follow up a little bit on this one. Whenever we have students on the show around Geo-Congress, we ask them questions like this, but this will be good because they can see that this isn't something that they came up with. I'm guessing you guys drove from Blacksburg down to New Orleans. You didn't get luxury transportation. What was that like, and how much planning was involved to be able to pull that off?
I was in college, right? So you just kind of fly by the seat of your pants.
Oh my God.
We planned on, I think we had 3 vans, and we drove there, I think it was like 20 hours. So we cycled through drivers. We planned out enough time to get down there. But yeah, I think it was relatively uneventful getting down there, and we were chatting with each other and finding out where we were stopping along the way to grab food. So it was a fun trip, though, hanging out with everyone.
Yeah.
Well, I think you never forget that, right? Like,
no.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I mean, going to New Orleans, we flew because we were not driving from Washington to Louisiana. But then when I was at Virginia Tech, we went to Geo-Congress in West Palm Beach, and we drove, and it was kind of the same thing, but with the 3 vans, and we just traded off drivers and drove it straight. On the way back, and this was me driving, I'm on 95 in the far left lane, and blew out a tire and had to go. I remember just doing the Jersey sweep to get over to the shoulder. I will never forget that. And then I was in the lead. I remember one van full of all the boys just was saw it and kept going. See ya. And then that
95's cutthroat like that,
Yeah. And then the third van stopped and helped us because I was sad to say I do not know how to change a tire. It was.
But again, very formative experience. When I had 2 of the students from University of Illinois on earlier this year, they talked about their road trip from Champaign to LA for Geo-Congress. And it is an amazing, those guys drive everywhere. So if you watch that episode, and for our viewers, you should go check it out, and we'll put a link down in the show notes here. It is an amazing, epic story about, stuff that I wouldn't do anymore as a 44-year-old, to be completely honest with you. But it's nice to hear. So I'm glad you guys had a similar experience back then. I love that.
The van that went by us, they got a speeding ticket. So,
One of the things I wanted to get out of this interview today was a little behind the scenes look at what it's like for our student members to come to Geo-Congress. We had 400 student members at Geo-Congress this year, which was our second highest total ever. And everybody gets very excited about the student competitions and to have the students there. But I don't know that anybody thinks about how the students get there or how they get home or what, we think about the experience, but probably not in the same terms that you guys do. So we're going to go Jack and then Bobby on this one. Can you give us a little taste of the Geo-Congress GSO experience from the Illinois perspective?
Yeah. So first, before you even think about going to Geo-Congress, it's all about the money, because it does take a little bit. So this year, our goal was to send 16 people. And based off our napkin math, that equated to about $26,000 in cost. And we ended up raising about $31,000. But my advice for other GSOs is that you should look at corporate sponsorships. We were lucky to have a lot of alumni, all kinds of grants, whether your school offers it or someone else. And then lastly, also, I feel obligated to shout this out now that I'm involved with Student Leadership Council, but you can apply to our small grants program for up to $500. We're also looking at changing that process a little bit to make it faster and streamlined. And then also, of course, you got to figure out how you're going to purchase those things. So this year we had to set up a bank account and we have a debit card. But it's doable, but it's something that does take a little bit of planning. And then obviously you get into logistics, which Bob might be better suited to talk about.
I guess before I begin, I just want to brag about Jack a little bit. He worked his butt off doing the financial work for this trip, and so I just want to quickly give him some praise, thank him. We honestly couldn't have made the trip without his work, so thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Bobby.
You're awesome, man. With that being said, so most of the team flew out. Obviously, naturally, makes a lot of sense, right? I was part of a small subset of the team. Me, my friend Maggie, who's also the costume designer for me, and my friend Danny, who's also the voiceover for the Geo video, if you've seen it. We all decided to drive out because we needed to transport the Geo wall box, our Geo wall box, to LA, and we didn't really want to deal with customs. We didn't want to deal with, or not customs, but like we didn't really
TSA.
deal with it. Yeah, TSA. Thank you. Can you tell I don't fly often? TSA. We didn't want to deal with it being mishandled through like baggage claim, for instance. We were just worried about some logistics of the box being mishandled through travel, through like air travel. So we opted to drive instead. Maggie and I had taken some big road trips before, and so had Danny. So we were all pretty well equipped, and it was like 2 to 3 days to get there and 3 to 4 days to get back. But it was really fun. We stopped at a few places on the way, a few like national parks on the way back too. And yeah, it was. I still can't really believe we pulled that off. We actually we had a little mishap. Funny enough, once we got to California. We went to Home Depot to buy some supplies for the box. We had to do some last minute like finishing touches on our box, and we noticed that both of Maggie's front tires on their car were completely bald from the trip, and they were new tires, like they were brand new tires, and we had no idea how they got so bald. Our theory is I'm gonna pick on Arizona. Our theory is that I-40 balded their tires because they had some of the worst potholes that we'd experienced in the entire trip. And for me personally, in my life, they were horrible. The road conditions out there were really bad, and there was even like a bulge coming out of one of Maggie's tires too. We're not really sure how that happened, but we got it fixed. Fortunately, we didn't drive back with those tires. But
so not a shout out, an anti shout out to the Arizona DOT, and it's coming from pavement people. So maybe they should get wise, I guess. But you never have a moment where you're sitting and eating dinner at like a Sonic in Utah where you're like, what are we doing here?
We had a few moments like that for sure. I think we let's see. Where do we stop? Tucumcari, New Mexico on the way there. And I think we were like getting breakfast and we're like, God, it's like 6 a.m. What are we doing? It's so exhausting.
But I guess the follow-up question there for both of you is what makes it worth it? Why do you do it?
Jack, would you like to go first?
Well, I mean, again, I'm more of the paperwork guy. So a lot of that fundraising techniques and organizational techniques, you really learn how to work well with other people under pressure. And we also didn't talk about, we had months of planning to actually build and design the wall, and obviously your geo video, Bobby. So all of those factors are good foundations for building skills like time management and collaboration. And then, of course, you also get to network. There's plenty of people I've met through this process that will undoubtedly be useful for networking in the future.
Absolutely. I would agree, Jack. I would also emphasize like the people you get to work with and the people you meet, something you can't really get that if you don't go to a conference like Geo-Congress. I think it's a really valuable experience. You meet a whole lot of people from all over the globe studying the same thing you are, and you get to work with some really cool people, like Jack, for instance. It's really cool working with him. But also some of the other grad students in geotech at University of Illinois. Like I don't think I would have met them or been as close to them if not for joining GSO. So yeah, I think it's been a really valuable experience just meeting new people and getting to work with them on GeoWall, GeoVideo, all these projects.
That's great. Geo-Congress would definitely not be what it is without the students there. I describe Monday as pleasantly on the edge of chaos. Like you always get the feeling that like you're right there, like something could happen and everything could just go crazy, but that's a good place to be. You want to live right on that edge. That's it. 10 of the best. Thanks for sticking around till the end. I always say if you liked what you saw, and you probably did because you're here at the end, click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Director's Cut is back next week and every week with brand new episodes, brand new interviews with different GI members every week. So the next time you run into them at a function, you can say, hey, I know about your family vacation or about your PhD work. And they won't be horrified because they'll remember they were on the show. Thanks to everybody for watching all of these episodes, and we're going to keep them coming. We really appreciate the viewers, and we will see all of you with a brand new episode of Director's Cut next week. Okay, the music story. I got to hear this.
The music story. So, I went to Trinity College in Dublin, and I had a classmate called Dick Evans, and Dick.
I already know where this is going. This is great.
Good. And Dick and his brother and a few others created a band, and it was called The Hype. And there's a very famous place in Dublin called McGonagall's where a lot of bands get their start. And so a bunch of my classmates and myself went there to listen to The Hype. And, we kind of went there with the kind of approach, this is Dick and his friends. How bad are they going to be? And it was kind of, we went there and we're like, man, damn it, they're good. They've got a good sound. And anyway, about a month later, we said, let's go again. And so we went to listen to them. And it turned out that it was a concert that was going to be Dick's last concert with the band, because he had decided he wanted to focus on his academics, and so he was going to leave the band. And so he literally did. He came on stage, they did a set, and at the time they were doing a lot of covers of just other stuff. And Dick walks off the stage, and then a little while later, the reconfigured band comes on, and they start playing original stuff, and they announced that they were changing their name to U2.
We'll do Tiny Auger. I did that. It goes something like, hold me closer, tiny auger. And then it goes something like, count the strata in the ground.
It is. If that is not sweet music to any geotechnical engineer out there, I don't know what we're going to do with those people. It's fantastic. So the second one we're going to talk about, and maybe this will be a quick one, is the Van Halen. We're going to go back to the beginning. Do you have a favorite Van Halen album?
I had all the Van Halen albums. As a matter of fact, I remember in middle school, it was like we had a industrial arts class, and we had to create, and I did some kind of wood and copper thing that had the Van Halen logo on it.
I knew where that was going as soon as you started. That is amazing.
Like, how middle school is that, right?
Okay, well, I got to put my mask back on for this one. So I am not a slasher movie person. I like the psychological thrillers.